Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha, Kodash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing his truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And as always, I would like to give the double honors to our apostles and elders of the Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. And I wanted to give a little bit more edification on Isaiah chapter 19, verse 18, where you have some guys at IUIC who basically went into or called themselves trying to tap into this subject, and they fumbled. So I wanted to give a little bit more edification on Isaiah 19, verse 18, because Isaiah 19 verse 18, even 19 verse 19, has nothing to do with ancient Egypt. And especially for you newer brothers who are coming into the faith, you're just learning of this gospel, the kingdom of heaven. One of the things that you need to understand is that when you read the Holy Scriptures, it has to be read with a spiritual eye. You know, you cannot read the Holy Scriptures like it's a Dr. Seuss Green Eggs and Ham book. You can't read the Holy Scriptures like it's a novel. And in a matter of fact, when you go to Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, the 28th chapter, it tells you how you get the understanding of the book as it is written in Proverbs, the book of Proverbs. With all thine getting, get understanding. You get understanding by going precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. Okay, so you know, as Vocab Malone would say, Hebrew hopscotch, which he was mocking us. But without a doubt, he cannot deny the fact that the only way to break the code of the Holy Scriptures is to go precept upon precept. Because if you read the Holy Scriptures like it's a regular novel, you're going to think the book is a myth. You're going to think that everything that was written in the book never happened. And then ultimately, it's going to lead to destruction. So when you read the Holy Scriptures, it's very important to know that you have to read it with a spiritual eye. And that begins with faith, according to Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, which is a gift given from the heavens and passed down to earth upon elected men to preach the kingdom of heaven here on earth, like it says in the book of Revelation. Okay, the angel who had the everlasting gospel to preach the everlasting gospel, which is the kingdom of heaven on earth, in which we're fulfilling that very prophecy. So again, okay, you gotta, you know, it all starts with faith at the end of the day. Being given the gift of faith, which is given to initiated souls to preach the everlasting gospel, the kingdom of heaven here on earth. So we read here in Isaiah, the 19th chapter, which is going into and Egypt. Now we know that there's no way this is talking about ancient Egypt during the time of Moses, because by the time Isaiah wrote this, okay, generations upon generations have already passed by. Now, could this be talking about Egypt in a sense during the time of the Syrian wars? Well, you got to remember, okay, history tends to repeat itself, okay, and ultimately when you read further down in Isaiah, you learn that this Egypt would be tied to the Assyrians. Now we know that the modern day Assyrians today are the Edomites. So the Edomites would be tied to modern day Egypt. Okay, so we scroll back up here and we read Isaiah 19 verse 17. It says, "And the land of Egypt shall be a terror unto Egypt." Now, we're going to stop right there because, again, Egypt is mentioned. But this is where you put your spiritual lens on. Because when you go to the book of Revelation, the 11th chapter and the 8th verse, it reads, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city." Now we know that the great city in the book of Revelation is speaking of Babylon the Great. And Babylon the Great has been identified as the United States of America. And you got some dummies out there who's basically saying that America is not a city, it's a country. Okay, but people don't seem to understand the context of city. Okay, America is a city. It is a country filled with cities. Okay, and a matter of fact, you hear about the United States, right? Well, what makes a state? What makes a state within a country is basically when you have multiple cities and towns within that state. Okay, without a city, without multiple cities or towns in a particular region, you don't have a state anymore. So what makes the United States the United States? The fact that it is a country a country filled with a conglomerate of multiple cities and towns and villages, suburbs, suburban areas, you name it. And whenever you fill out an application to get a job or to get a license, they always ask you if you are a U.S. citizen. So you do the math. What is a U.S. citizen? A U.S. citizen is a person that lives in the city, one of the cities of America. Okay, so America is indeed a great city. Now, what I would like to do today is to go into that word city a little bit more. But, okay, America, aka Babylon the Great, is a great city. I mean, how is it that you're a farmer who don't live in a city, But then you apply for a job and they ask you if you're a U.S. citizen. You say yes over the fact that you're considered a U.S. citizen if you was born in the United States of America. So it has nothing to do with a country. The so-called elites know that this big fucking country ultimately is a great city, because it is a country that is a conglomerate of many cities. Okay, so you can understand. And when you combine all those cities together, you got one big city. So if you were born in the U.S., you would be considered a U.S. citizen. Okay. So, anyways, okay. In Revelation 11 verse 8, it says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city." Okay. Which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. So America, which is that great city, Babylon the Great, it's spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. And all you have to do is look at all the works that America has presented, not only to its citizens, but also to these other countries and these different leaders around the world. Okay, well, why is this place spiritually called Sodom? Because this is, I believe, America's the first country to make it legal in all 50 states for 2 men to get married, 2 women to get married, for men to be married to animals. And now in America is trying to push pedophilia through something which they call MAPS, which is an acronym for minor attractive people, or minor, I forgot what the S stands for. But now they're trying to legalize pedophilia. Okay, so this place is Sodom. This place is modern day Sodom and Egypt. Okay, and this place is known as Egypt because the greatest slavery known to mankind, the greatest atrocities which happened to the nation of Israel, the true biblical Israelites, which are the Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, the greatest slavery that ever happened to the Israelites, and the greatest atrocities that ever happened to the Israelites happened over here on the soils of America. Okay, this whole entire country, everything you see right before your eyes, okay, whether if they're highways, freeways, streets, roads, sidewalks, neighborhoods, suburban areas, neighborhoods, cities, towns, villages, okay, it was the Israelites, which are the Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, who built all these things you see before you. Okay, we were the ones who erected these different street poles. We are the ones who connected all of these telephone lines so that houses could, people who lived in different houses could contact each other. We built the network frame and everything you see in America today. It was all done off of the blood, sweat, and the tears of the Israelites. Okay, so that's why this place is also called Egypt. Now, we know that ancient Egypt was built off of the blood, sweat, and tears of the ancient Israelites. Okay, we were the ones who built those pyramids and those different buildings and structures you see down in Egypt. But the Lord completely laid waste to that place. You know, after the Israelites left out of ancient Egypt, well, all you got to do is look at ancient Egypt today, and all you see for the most part is sand and pyramids. But even to this very day, even as I speak, we're still in slavery. According to Baruch 3 verse 8, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach, and to be subject unto payments. So being subject unto payments, you know, in which in a sense you can also say it goes back to the curse that the Lord put upon Adam in the Garden of Eden, where the Lord told Adam in the book of Genesis, where he told Adam, you know, from the sweat of thy foot all the way to thy head shalt thou eat bread all the days of thy life. So in other words, we will have to work and we will have to work and toil and labor just to eat, which is also part of the reason why Yahawashi made that statement, in the book of Matthew, I believe. Could also be in the book of Mark, where he said, if a man don't work, he don't eat. So if a man do not work, he do not eat. So, you know, a part of us having to work in order to get our bread is a part of that curse. Okay. But we're subject under payments. You know, if you want to maintain a roof over your head, or you have your own space, your own privacy, if you want to maintain having your car, you got to work for it, man. You know, if you want to drink water cleaner than what's coming out of the faucet in your own home, you're going to have to pay for it, man. You know, you can't even collect rainwater, which is supposed to be free, because these Edomites have sprayed chemicals in the air. Where if you drink the rainwater, you might drop dead, man. So, you know, we're subject under payments. Showing you that we're living in Egypt all over again. Because first off, if you're not, I'm gonna just say it right now. If you're not working for gold or silver, then you're technically working for free. Because this petrodollar that we have been subject to, not just in America, but all around the globe, this petrodollar has no value to it. It has no weight to it. Because, you know, back in the ancient world, real riches, such as gold and silver, were weighed on the balance to determine its worth. You know, gold and silver were weighed by the pound. Okay. But not just by the pound, but its purity. You know, the more pure gold is, the shinier it is, the smoother it is, and the more beneficial to the body it is. So, we're not working for real money. We're basically working for paper. And that's what this country will not tell you. Now, when the Federal Reserve was first set up, I believe back in the year 1911. It's going to go into a little bit of history here. Okay, the U.S. dollar actually has some value to it because it was backed by gold or silver. Okay, you had the gold backs and then you had the paper backs, which eventually became greenbacks, of which John F. Kennedy was shot in the head over because he tried to use that money to help his people. But so that led to his assassination. But even greenbacks were worthless because it only had a little bit of silver back to it, because eventually gold was phased out of the dollar. And you would know it too if the dollar had some gold or silver to it, because you would see a gold or a silver certificate on the dollar. But little by little, what happened? Gold was phased out of the dollar. Now people only started to see silver certificates, which was like a small silver symbol. The gold certificate would be like a small golden symbol on the dollar, indicating what it was backed by. And this is why, going back to the early 1900s, the U.S. dollar actually had some buying power to it. But okay, eventually gold and silver were phased out of the Federal Reserve dollar, and it became greenbacks, which you see today. But even greenbacks had some value to it because silver wasn't completely phased out, but it would be eventually in the around the mid 1900s, to where you would eventually have greenbacks that was backed by neither gold nor silver. So at that point, when you was going to work, you was not working for dollars that actually had gold and silver with some value or worth to it. You was basically working for paper at this point. And if you're working for paper, you're working for free. Here in America, you're working for free. Not only that, but this whole financial system is built on debt. That pretty much proves that America is modern day Egypt. So, okay, when we read Revelation 11 verse 8, right? And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of that great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. You realize that great city is talking about Babylon the Great. And Babylon the Great has been identified in this generation as the United States of America, which is also the revival of Rome. That's according to Revelation, the 13th chapter. So, Now, with that being said, okay, Isaiah chapter 19, verse 18, right? In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt. Now, the land of Egypt is talking about, we know that the land of Egypt is talking about America. So America is the new Egypt, okay? This is where the greatest slavery took place at upon the whole face of the earth. And this is also the place where slavery is still going on to this very day. Okay, so whether if you believe it or not, slavery is still going on here in America today. Because you're not working for gold or silver, you're working for paper, which is not real money. Real money is gold and silver. So, on top of that, you look on the back of your dollar bill, and, you know, we like to use that as an example, like all the time. On the back of your dollar bill, what do you see? You see a pyramid. So in that day, okay, shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan. Now, speak the language of Canaan is where I really want to draw your attention at. Because in ancient Egypt, okay, we knew how to speak Hebrew. Because what is the language of Canaan? The language of Canaan is the Hebrew tongue. And it's not just the Hebrew tongue, it's the Paleo-Hebrew tongue, in which in the Holy Scriptures is known as the Lashawan Kodash, which Lashawan means tongue. That's how you say language. In Hebrew, it's Lashawan. And then you got Kodash, which means holy. It means holy or sacred. So, Lashawan Kodash means holy or sacred language. And that is our language. Okay? Our language is the holy language, the Paleo-Hebrew. And we were speaking Hebrew. We was speaking Hebrew before we went into captivity back in ancient Egypt. And after we came out of captivity in ancient Egypt. So there's no way Isaiah 19 verse 18 is talking about ancient Egypt. Okay? And that's just to say if somebody mentions, well, what about Egypt during the time of the Assyrian wars between the Northern Empire, the Seleucid Empire, and the Southern Empire, the Ptolemaic Empire? Nope, still not talking about that, because even before we went into captivity during that time, we were speaking the language of Canaan. And even after we came out of captivity during those times, we were speaking the language of Canaan. So in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan. What is this pertaining to? Well, when we go to Jeremiah, give you a little bit of context here. Jeremiah 17 verse 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. And what will be a part of our heritage which the Lord gave us? The Lashawan Kodash. So, as we being Israelites, as a nation of people, we not only lost our heritage in the sense that we lost who we were as a nation of people. We no longer had the name of the Heavenly Father. Yahweh or his son Yahawashai, we not only lost our heritage in the sense of the customs that were given us as a nation of people. When we lost our heritage, we also lost the fact that we basically lost the fact that we no longer could speak Lashawan Kodash. We could no longer speak in our native tongue anymore. So us losing our heritage also meant us losing the language that we used to speak, which was the Lashawan Kodash. So if thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So, basically when we went in captivity, we lost everything which the Lord has given us. Our language, which is the Lashawan Kodash, the Paleo-Hebrew. Okay, we lost our nationality, and we also lost the customs that were given us that we used to keep back in ancient. So when we go back to Isaiah 19 verse 18, in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan. What is this pertaining to? This is pertaining to that there will come a time and point where the Lord will return us to a pure tongue that we may call upon him with one consent. Okay? This is the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3. And give me a moment here. Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 9. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may call upon the Lord, that they may call upon the name of the Lord, Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashai, to serve him with one consent. See that? So Isaiah 19 verse 18 is indicating that there will come a time of point where we would lose the language of Canaan, but we would return to speaking that language once again. So the Lord said that he would turn to the people, to whom the Israelites, a pure language, that they may call upon the name of Yahweh Bahasham Yahawashai, to serve him with one consent. So then if we go back, right? Isaiah 19 verse 18, in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan. We will begin to speak this language again. Because we have lost our language. Because the Lord told Jeremiah that not only him, but the nation of Israel would go into captivity and we would lose our native tongue. And I believe this is the only captivity where this is the only captivity and the very first captivity that we ever went into where we was not speaking our native tongue. So we're living in that time now where we are speaking the language of Canaan, where we're speaking the Paleo-Hebrew by, you know, going into Hebrew words, you know, sending up prayers in the Paleo-Hebrew, you know, asking the Lord for blessings in the Paleo-Hebrew, sending up curses upon the wicked, the 2/3 of our people, and the heathens in the Paleo-Hebrew. You see? You know? So, you know, well, now we're able to speak our native tongue, which is the holy language, the Paleo-Hebrew, the Lashawan Quadash. We're able to speak that again because we're living at a time where we're going to need to call on those names before the Lord returns, in which, according to Acts 2, verse 21, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved, ye men of Israel. So the elect is going to call on those names, according to Zechariah 13, verse 9, in order to be delivered. Okay? So in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan, and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction. In that day there shall be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt. And that altar is what? Okay, that altar is talking about the camps that we set up throughout different regions in order to prophesy. Okay, whenever we set up camps, we go out there, we're giving warning, we're going into prophecy, we're going to edification on different topics. That is an altar being set up before the Lord, okay, in which we are making ourselves a living sacrifice, which will be according to Romans 12, verse 1. Because back in the ancient world, when you would set up an altar to the Lord, that was a place of sacrifice. And whenever our forefathers would set up an altar back in the ancient world, okay, they would always make mention of the Heavenly Father's name upon the altar. So, you know, when we go out on the highways and hedges, the very first thing we do is if we're not in the midst of edifying somebody, we call on, you know, we give all praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. You see, before, you know, we began prophesying on the highways and hedges. So that altar is talking about now, man, going out on the highways and hedges and prophesying before the Lord. You know, but this doofus from IUIC said, you know, this talking about, you know, dying and no, man. Okay, you know, how the fuck you gonna set up an altar if you're dead? You got to be alive to set up an altar, man. But okay, in that day there shall be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. So that's pretty much all I wanted to bring out there. No, I pray that this video has been edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. With that, I'm going to say Shalom. It's on to the next one.